It is extremely common when something is broken in your Google Ads account that when you fix it, your performance in your account gets way, way worse before it gets better. I was scrolling on LinkedIn and I saw a post by a colleague of mine, Menachem Ani. He owns an agency. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flash it up on here and we're going to go through it sentence by sentence and talk about it. So in the original post, Menachem says, when you fix a tracking problem in Google Ads account, the account often gets worse before it gets better. What I just said. Nobody warns you about it, so people panic and undo the fix. This is so completely accurate. I cannot even begin to count the number of times that I've seen this. I am working with a client right now. They're doing a 10-session consulting package with me. They have purchased 10 sessions. And as part of the initial audit, I saw that they were turning campaigns on and then they were pausing them a couple days later. This cannot happen. And the justification that the client had was that they had enough data. But it's not just data, it's time passed. That may be their baseline of data, which basically means that they need even more to give that time to settle in. And so Menachem explains it here. Here is what actually happened. And he talks about how they recently cleaned up a tracking discrepancy between a Shopify and a Google Ads for an e-commerce brand, right? So somebody's selling something e-com. It's a little bit more straightforward than lead gen, but the principles apply. And I think the reason that e-com is a little bit more straightforward is we all understand a purchase of an item. So to our senses, it makes a lot more sense than something abstract like a form or a phone call or downloading a white paper where you're exchanging an email or something like that, or setting up an appointment. So again, this is an e-com account that he's specifically talking about here. And he's saying the kind where the numbers Google reported never quite matched what the store actually booked. Again, I see this constantly when it comes to my lead gen clients, and that's where Google is reporting one number. And then if you look in the CRM or if you talk to the actual business, they're saying we're not getting that much, or the sales team is screaming. And so once they corrected it, Google had to relearn the account on accurate data. Absolutely, completely correct. And I talk about this a lot in my content because I also feel like, and I know Menachem, the one who posted this, does run an agency, but I feel like this is a very, very hard conversation that doesn't often happen between agencies and clients, which is why I love coaching and auditing so much. I do not like to tell a client, hey, you have to make these changes. And when you make these changes, you are going to see performance decreases, because that can be a very uncomfortable conversation. Not only that, but that is a conversation that has to be had. And then a business case needs to be made for the justification, so that if my client isn't the owner, if it's a CMO situation, that client then could go to their boss and tell them, hey, here's the plan. Everyone has their skin in the game. Everyone has their goals on the line. So it is a hard conversation to have. And if you're paying dirt cheap prices, or if you're just outsourcing to an agency for $500 a month or $1,000 a month, or going offshore, you don't have the capacity in that situation to have that conversation and talk about what's going to happen and expect the pros and the cons. So sometimes what agencies will do is they'll keep running on a bad setup because they don't want the performance to go down, even if they know that it's the right thing to do and your numbers don't match. They'll just point to platform metrics and be like, hey, these are fine. Look at this. And it's not matching your business the entire time it's happening. I do feel like Menachem is one of the good agencies. He charges, probably great retainers, which is why I'm comfortable sharing this. But I think it is a really, really important conversation to have. And so, he talks about here in his case that the relearning took about 3 to 4 weeks. I would argue that that's a short amount of time, but this is just what he experienced with the client that he's talking about. And then he said, during that month, the reports look shaky. 100%. Nobody feels good about that. And if you're not having regular conversations or paying enough that you can have regular conversations with your agency to guide you through that and find the signs in your reports that things are indeed happening and on the right track, then you're in a very, very bad spot when it comes to making the right decisions for your company and for your business long term. Because here's the catch here. Again, I'm going through this too. I made recommendations for a client that I'm working with, but guess what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be opening the account and showing the client, hey, I know this feels uncomfortable. I know you don't like these numbers, but look, here's what I'm seeing. Here are the micro signals. Here's some data it is going in the right direction. And so I'm basically going to buffer and I'm going to ease that pain while those reports and those numbers look shaky as they're trying something new. And so again, he's saying this, and then he's saying smart bidding was recalibrating to the numbers it had never seen before. And yeah, I mean, I think that that's a case, for him, he's giving the example of broken tracking. So smart bidding isn't seeing those numbers. But for my case, the client that I'm working with, in this case, the campaign setup was just wrong. And so they have to really run dual campaigns and slowly turn off the old campaigns. And so their profitability is going to go down because they're ultimately spending more while slowly dialing down the other campaigns. So, I mean, it's going to look inefficient for a while until it looks more efficient and everything is officially transferred over because they're pushing more spend into the system for a brief amount of time while they're moving to a better setup that is going to work better for this client. And so again, two different errors, but the same thesis. When you fix a problem in Google Ads, the account gets worse before it gets better. Nobody tells you that. Well, I'm telling you this today. So again, Menachem goes on in the next paragraph to say here, if you judge the account on week 1, you would have called the fix a mistake and rolled it back. Again, I've seen it. I've seen it over and over in my audits. I see it all the time in my coaching business. This is what people do. They get really, really uncomfortable because they don't have a guide or an expert or someone who's been doing this for 17 years to tell them, slow your roll. It's going to be okay. Trust the process. This is where we're headed. And then he's saying his recommendation, which is give it a full cycle and the picture changes. The last 30 days, the account is running around a 6x ROAS. Incredible. And he's saying that is on Google. And then they have a blended ROAS with 10x once organic is factored in. So again, the halo effect from Google Ads into organic, into the other channels of marketing. And he's like, and then those numbers can scale on. And I don't disagree with this. And then he wraps up his post by saying 2 lessons that he takes from this every time. First, your bidding is only as smart as the data that you feed it. 100%. I mean, we talk about this all the time on this channel. You have to be feeding good data. You have to be giving the appropriate signals. Signals are everything. There's micro signals in these campaigns that you have to be feeding your campaigns, or you're just not going to get good results or results at all in some cases. I'm looking at an account today where they're not feeding nearly enough data and literally they have no conversions whatsoever. That is a problem. What I am going to do for this client is I'm going to step them through in a point-by-point basis how they can move to the point where they will get those signals. But until then, it's very, very, very data starved and signal starved to run that account and expect to get anything out of it. And then he also says right here, fix the tracking before you touch anything else. Accurate. I mean, I've said this analogy before. It's like driving somewhere, but not knowing where you're going. You're just like heading to California, but what have you given it an actual direction and a point on the map to go to, or are you just heading in that direction? And it may not even go in that direction to begin with. Very, very, very important to consider. And then he's like, second, patience is part of a strategy. The algorithm needs a full learning cycle to trust a new signal, and rushing it resets the clock, and I think that is a huge, huge factor in everything we do in Google Ads and frankly, in marketing and in life. Right now, I am in the process of getting my fitness in line. I've been walking an average of 13,000 steps a day. Today, I've already hit, let me look. Let me see what I'm at. I've already hit 8,000 steps. I walked for about an hour this morning. I walk in the afternoon. This is a slow, slow process. I've been doing this for, like I said, about a month. And I think in total, maybe I've lost 2.8 pounds. That doesn't feel like a lot when I'm on the treadmill for hours a day. I think my total workout time, because I count walks as workouts, has been over 33 hours of time to lose 2.8 pounds. This takes time. Good things in this world take time. Marketing included. It takes time. Look at this channel. I've been doing this channel for over a year and a half. Yeah, I haven't been consistent. I think Google Ads, that's a good thing about it. It gives you that power, that push, that consistency over time, in the form of your money. But if you look at this channel, it is a slow, incredibly slow climb. But yesterday, I booked 2 clients off of this channel. So I think it is something that works. I think marketing in general works, whatever form of marketing you choose. I am the expert in the paid side. I choose to build mine organically, which is a little bit slower. But all of that said, when it comes to marketing, marketing takes time, and we have to be patient, and we have to take a deep breath, and we have to realize that when we are doing things and we are moving in the right direction, sometimes the reports look bad. Sometimes they do not look good. And we have to be careful about making these rash decisions, which I see over and over and over again in my coaching calls and my audits with clients. And really, I want to stress that you really shouldn't be ashamed of this. You really shouldn't feel like there's this, black and white, do this, do that, when I'm saying this is what you need to do, and feel ashamed or confused or anything. Like, I'm not saying that those feelings that you have inside of you are invalid. What I am saying is that these are normal things. And as an expert, as somebody who's not emotionally tied to your business, I come in as a consultant. Those are the things that I really do help you see and work through. I think a lot of times when we come to marketing, it is very, very, very scientific in a lot of aspects, but there is an art to it as well. And, again, I think that is the decision making and the strategy and the direction and how you go. That's the art part. The scientific part is the data. But I also think that a lot of people don't realize the emotional component too. I think when you're a business owner and you're just really, really wanting this to work, you sometimes aren't seeing as clearly as you could. And my job as a consultant and the expert is to come in and help you see clearly and help you think in the way that is going to be optimal for your business's success. So I hope this video helped today. I'm so glad I was able to share this post and that it came across my feed today. I think it is a fantastic example from one of my colleagues of exactly the way to think for you to see the most success out of Google Ads. And I feel like a lot of agencies are not going to tell you these things. They're not going to build in a pricing that's going to allow them to have this very, very important conversation for you. And my average business owner can't afford an agency retainer isn't going to know this at all. They're just going to be pausing campaigns willy-nilly when they think things aren't working and never giving it time. And again, that's where I step in to tell you, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that, and then get you in the right direction. And then you never have to hire an agency and pay a retainer again, because I am here to help you. In any case, I hope that helps. I will see you in the comments, and I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Have a good weekend.